land that George Washington once envisioned as becoming a 14th colony, site of the worst bridge disaster in our state's history, and a legend of a long-winged creature with glowing red eyes. I'm Wayne Worth, and you're watching On the Road in West Virginia, our 55 counties, Mason County. Long before the legend of the Mothman, much of what we today call Mason County in this section of the Ohio Valley was considered sacred grounds for the Shawnee Indians, as they used much of the region as hunting grounds and even had a village along Old Town Creek. The 1700s would also bring its fair share of white explorers to the region, as dudes like John Peter Sally, who by the way was the first person to discover coal in West Virginia in 1742, would venture up the Kanawha River on his way westward. And we can't forget French explorer Céloron Blainville and his heavy metal band, minus the electric guitar and big hair of course, who would bury one of their lead plates at the mouth of the Kanawha in 1749, claiming these lands as French territory. Now by 1770, our friend George Washington made his way to Mason County and surveyed over 50,000 acres from Point Pleasant to Letarte and around 10,000 acres south of Point Pleasant along the Kanawha River personally for himself. Believe it or not, his plan was to clear and build on this land and start another colony named Vandalia and make Point Pleasant its capital. However, those plans abruptly changed when the American Revolution took shape. Even with the French and Indian War long gone and a Revolutionary War about to begin, a tragic massacre up in the northern Panhandle would spark a war that would eventually come to a head right here in 1774. What would become Lord Dunmore's War all started in April of 1774 when a group of frontiersmen led by a dude named Daniel Greathouse enticed 8 Indians to have a few drinks with them by the campfire near the mouth of Yellow Creek. Soon after, Greathouse and his men massacred all 8 of them for no particular reason. Among the victims were the brother and sister of Chief Logan, who by the way was the leader of the Mingo tribe, which led a very peaceful and diplomatic Logan into a man seeking vengeance. As a result, bloodshed would spread throughout western Virginia as Logan raided white settlements throughout the upper Ohio Valley and into the Monongahela Valley. When the Shawnee and Delaware tribes joined in on the action and led raids across the Ohio River, it led Lord Dunmore, who was governor of Virginia at that time, to respond by sending 2 armies into the Ohio Valley, one led by him and the second led by Colonel Andrew Lewis. The initial plan was that Lewis would start at Camp Union in Lewisburg and move west, and Dunmore would move south from Fort Pitt and join Lewis's forces near Shawnee villages along the Ohio River. Well, that plan didn't quite work out, as Lord Dunmore delayed his trip due to going duck hunting, and by the time Andrew Lewis arrived in Point Pleasant, it took only 4 days for Shawnee leader Chief Cornstalk to lead 900 warriors on a foggy morning in October of 1774 to stage a full-fledged attack on Lewis's men. After several hours of musket fire and fierce hand-to-hand combat, Colonel Lewis lost around 150 men, including his brother Charles Lewis, and Chief Cornstalk and his warriors retreated. In the end, Chief Cornstalk would agree to the Treaty of Camp Charlotte, which established the Ohio River as a boundary between the natives and white settlers. Also, the Shawnee agreed to stop attacking travelers along the Ohio River. Unfortunately for Chief Cornstalk, he would be taken into captivity at Fort Randolph after trying to warn the white settlers that his tribe wanted to resume hostilities in the region. And after an incident where 2 white men were killed, Cornstalk was then murdered, which led to more violence between the natives and white settlers throughout western Virginia up until the 1790s. Once the bloodshed finally ended, the early 1800s would bring more permanent settlers into the region, as the county's population would soar around 5,000 by 1820. What followed next was an early industrial boom that was quite diversified. Now, of course, farming has always been a stabilizing force in the county's economy. However, by the mid-1800s, Mason County would see moderate coal mining in the West Columbia area and large-scale timbering, which supported a shipbuilding industry at Point Pleasant. Now, towns like Hartford, New Haven, and Mason would also become major boom towns due to industries centered around salt brine, and by the late 1860s, the town of Mason would even become the world's largest producer of bromine. And as for the Civil War, it would not really have an effect on these early industries, mainly due to the fact that Mason County didn't really see any action, other than a Confederate raid in Point Pleasant, which was very brief. Now, the 20th century would be much of the same, especially with the arrival of the Marietta Manufacturing Company in 1915. As a result, Point Pleasant overnight became our state center for shipbuilding and would continue to be for nearly 70 years. The company was even instrumental in supporting the war effort in both the First and Second World Wars, as they produced ocean craft for the U.S. government. Now, the chemical industry along this section of the Ohio River Valley would also produce a variety of products ranging from plastic film to synthetic lubricants to even TNT during World War II. And with flooding being such a problem, along with an increase in boat and barge traffic along the mighty Ohio, the Gallipolis Locks and Dam was constructed in 1937. And yes, we can't forget about the electric power industry and the building of 2 coal-fired power plants in the northern part of the county. It seemed like things were really looking up here in Mason County. However, that would all change on December 15, 1967, as tragedy struck within a matter of seconds. The collapse of the Silver Bridge at Point Pleasant would be one of the worst bridge disasters in American history. The bridge itself is not like your classic suspension bridge, which are linked with steel cables, but instead was linked with parallel chains and steel eye-bars. Around 5 o'clock that afternoon, one of the steel eye-bars failed, plunging the bridge to the river, and 46 people to their deaths. It was definitely a tragedy that hit the region really hard. What resulted was federal legislation being passed to start a nationwide bridge inspection and safety program. Which brings us right here in the legend of this long-winged creature. The legend of the Mothman really took shape during the year of 1966 as people around Point Pleasant started reporting seeing this moth-like creature with glowing red eyes randomly appearing. Matter of fact, there would be a total of 26 sightings that year alone. Mysteriously, after the Silver Bridge collapse, sightings of the Mothman diminished, which sparked the theory that both the Mothman and the Silver Bridge collapse were linked to a 200-year-old curse on the town stemming from the murder of Chief Cornstalk. Whether true or not, we'll never know. However, what we do know is that this creature has gained so much popularity across the country that every third weekend in September a festival in Point Pleasant is held just for the legend of the Mothman and attracts thousands of people near and far. From George Washington's dream of building a 14th colony to the legend that continues to put this small part of the Ohio Valley on the map, Mason County's story alone is truly a West Virginia treasure. I'm Wayne Worth, and until next time, always remember, what we value and hold important to our lives today came from events that happened yesterday, and it's when we begin to understand the events of yesterday that we fully embrace today, which makes tomorrow become less of a mystery. I'm Wayne Worth, and you're watching On the Road in West Virginia. Ran out of breath.